What is up, guys? It's your boy GRC. We're coming at you live every single day at 11 a.m. Eastern. Today we have a nice pre-recorded episode with my boy Walrus. He's been putting in that worky work. He's got a little sauce for us. We got Sam Stoll to talk about the technicals. I'm going to try to sit back and let these two grown men talk a little bit. And I listened to a couple of the Pulsechain testnet V3. Are you ready? Yes, I'm getting excited. Yes, I bought and staked some hex today. Yes, it's happening. My stomach, it's happening in my nucleus. But no, seriously, I want to know when this is coming out. This has been a long time coming. We're excited. I'm not saying that Pulsechain's coming out next week, next month, 3 months. I don't really know, but we're going to ask somebody in the industry. Liquid loans, guys. I am a sacrificer for liquid loans. So I want to know as much about it as I possibly can. And we're just going to get right into it, guys.
You already know what time it is.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Smoking a blunt on my way to the gym. 11 a.m. and I'm already tuned in. Got me some hex and I'm making a stake. Got me some heads on, I'm making it rain. Pay me some maxi and that's just in case. Jim ready to send me to show you the way.
D5 Pro. Yeah.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Walrus, hey, good to see you, bro. I like the wide angle camera view there. I like that. That's what I want to get set up in the future. How you been?
Good. Appreciate it, man. Good to see you again. It's been a while since the first stream.
Yeah, it was quite a long time ago. What type of you want to just dive right into it? What type of updates? What's been going on since then? Have you had with like liquid loans and other stuff?
Man, take me 4 hours just to give y'all an update on yesterday, let alone since then, right? Yeah, everything's been going well, man. We're, as far as on the LL specific side, since then I'm on the team now officially. I was always a big supporter, been around with all those guys since the very beginning of the project. Let's see, we're going on, this is coming right on month 4 since I've been officially on the team. You know, again, been there since the beginning. We had a pretty long time where we were talking, trying to figure out some of the commercial side, make sure that there's crypto can be tough, man. There's a lot of opinionated people. So you want to make sure that you actually have, you know, a very, very similar value base before you really decide you want to engage with people like that. So it took us a long time to, even though I love Christian and Dave, to work through and sit down and get things where we wanted. And so, yeah, we're 100% in. Since then, we're getting ready to deploy another launch of the contracts, update the front end. We're probably going to launch privately on V2B. Just there's a moving goalpost with V3. So we're probably going to go ahead and launch there privately, go through all our launch mechanics and our tests, things like that. Go ahead and double check the updates we made. And then we'll probably make them public on V3 just so there's not 2 migrations and all that kind of good stuff. But I mean, we're pretty much just finishing up infrastructure. The code stuff is pretty easy. It's GraphQL, archive nodes, multi-sig contracts. It's all that stuff that's tricky, getting Oracle situated properly. That's the stuff that's hard. And that's all the stuff that we've been getting more and more refined as we go along. And man, that's it. It's beautiful. We're excited. Just ready, going through all the stuff with the new consensus, man, but we're ready. We're ready.
What's the primary objective, or like, how are you providing value on the team? What is it that you're primarily doing?
Mostly just kind of a firefighter. I kind of go wherever I'm needed. A lot of these things, it's because I don't have a technical background in some ways. Sometimes I'm helpful looking at technical stuff because I don't know the answers already. There's a really interesting story about a guy who was really into psychedelics. He was a biologist, and he has a story where he's talking about his daughter, and he says, "Honey," they're at the aquarium, and he's like, "Honey, the fish wiggle their tails to swim." And she goes, "I know, Dad. They wiggle it the other way to go backwards." And the funniest thing is, so we already know that's wrong, right? But we can't get to that thought process because we already know the answer. So because she didn't know, she thought about something that doesn't make sense, like another way of moving. So again, she was wrong. But sometimes if people already know the answers to too many things, they can't explore problems. Like one of those, you can't solve a problem with the same thinking that got you into it. So sometimes with some of these technical things, it's that I'm just savvy enough to ask good, dumb questions. And sometimes we get to interesting places. And then on the when it comes to the relationship side, I understand enough of these things that technical people can take you seriously, realize I'm actually in the space, that I care about so many of these things. And then I'm proactive enough to actually go and get them. So just autistic enough to understand and not so autistic that I can't explain it.
You guys like you are just critical in this industry. Marketing is the one thing in this industry that is like not possible. Having a dude that holds himself well in a conversation in person. Yeah, like, oh my God, you'd think it's crazy to know. But I wanted to ask you real quick in layman's term, for all the new guys in here, because, you know, there could be 100, 200, 300 new guys in here that weren't around when we were initially sacrificing and reading all this stuff. What does liquid loans do for the average user?
Good question.
Sure. So the part that most people like to talk about is the one the least amount of people will use, and that's the actual lending and collateral side. So whenever you have PLS, there's a couple of reasons why you would do these different things, but what you can do is essentially collateralize it, and you basically mint stable coins against your collateral. So you can see it functioning like a loan. You can see it functioning like breaking down a denomination of value into a unit of measurement. And then some people can see it as like a light form of leverage. The most aggressive you could actually get is 110 is when there's the liquidation. So you could go like 115. So you could get to like 0.85, leverage, which is very, very minimal in the world of leverage, but you could use that for certain things. Some people use it there's certain advantages to how you would have that locked up. You can use it for the most important one for us is you mint the stable coin on it. So you have a decentralized stable coin that is backed by the native asset on the chain you care about, because that's why you're there. The other is that you now are able to maintain exposure to the price. So most people, when they're talking about a lot of these things, if they're treating them as an investment or even as like a native token, right? So we hold a lot of ETH to some degree because we have to have it to transact, right? But if you're holding ETH for anything other than that, it's because you want the number to go up, right? So you only need so much ETH. So like, why is there Godwills? Why are these huge players that hold ETH? Because they want the number to go up. They want exposure to the price. So certain amounts of these assets are actually utility. The other part is speculation, number go up. So if you take collateral levels and you're able to extract value to engage in other plays, put things into real life, buy assets with it, but you get to maintain that exposure to the price, that's what you really wanted, right? So using LL is a great way to maintain those things. There's no mixing of funds. Everyone's vault's individual. So just at a high level, there's this collateralization lending side. And then for most users, what is actually more impactful is that there's two different yield generating products and the stablecoin. So stablecoins are a huge problem, and they basically all suck right now for the most part. They have a list of problems. But as far as for users, what they're probably most interested in is that there's a risk on and a risk off yield project. So if you hold the loan token, which is the token that collects the fees from the system, you can stake that. And then you have a way of generating and sharing it on the fees. And then you also have the speculative value of the token. So that's risk on, right? Token can go up, you get more fees, everyone's happy. And then if you don't want exposure to the price, bear markets like a lot of us are experiencing now, you can also stake USDL, which is the stable coin, into the stability pool. And then you take rewards from different liquidation events and actually make the system a little stronger. So you can have risk off yield with the stable coin. You can have risk on yield with the loan. Then you have the lending side. So LL offers a lot. Most people just talk about the collateral side. It's not that I don't like talking about it, but to me, it's the one the least amount of users will use. I'd much more explain to them the yield side and why USDL is awesome, but it does all of those things. So two tokens, two different forms of yield and lending.
And we have and this is for all my guys. I'm trying to explain it to them slowly because we all looked at a lot of this stuff. Main use cases, there are many ways to use liquid loans, including borrow, lock up your existing PLS and mint your USDL loan, earn, provide USDL to the stability pool for loan and PLS rewards, stake loan to earn USDL and PLS from the borrowing fee revenue, redeem, unlock 1 USD worth of PLS for 1 USDL in the future if you choose. Sam, you got anything for me? Because you love all this stuff.
I like liquid loans. One thing that I also like to think about with the borrowing feature is an alternative to staking Pulse. Because people, like you said, people are going to want to earn yield. If they want exposure to Pulse in the future, right? The price go up. It's cool if you can earn yield while you're just sitting on something versus not, you know what I mean? It's just sitting here not doing me diddly squat. So you could do that in a validator. You could do, and you're probably not going to earn diddly squat there either. Or you could do that, say, through like a fiat type thing, similar to, say, liquid loans. Or with liquid loans, you can go in there, get USDL, take the USDL to increase your exposure, which is a form of yield, by like buying more Pulse and then doing the same thing and just like doing that to increase your exposure to the price action. It's called like increasing beta or whatever the case is. Or take that USDL, put it into the stability pool, right? Or go convert it to, you're going to get loan token too, right? So you could take your loan token and see if anybody's on the market and convert it to the loan token so you can get more loan token, or sell the loan token for more USDL and put it all into the stability pool to earn a yield. So this way you can effectively take your Pulse and put it into a validator to earn diddly squat, or you can take your Pulse, put it in here to actually earn a yield while you sit there and wait on it. And you can continue to build that position over time if that's where you're, if like, you know what I mean, if that's what you want to do on it. I think it's awesome, and what you guys have done is very, very interesting. What type of updates have you seen in the last like 4 months? And thank you for explaining it. That was a good question, GRC. We should have started with that question.
So for us, most of it is nothing that anyone actually cares about. It's all the stuff. Well, I guess now that we're talking about Aragon and Lighthouse and Stage 7, and now everyone in the world cares about nodes. I guess we all do care now. But most of it is all on the back end. It's getting, nodes that have it where you can sample fast enough to have data aggregation without like bumping into like DDoS stuff. It's making sure that the GraphQL and some of that stuff gets data properly. So it's all background stuff as far as like developer. Nothing cool, nothing number go up, nothing fancy on the front is really changed. When we launch the docs, we'll actually have the analytics and all those things will be up though. So that'll be cool. So some of that functionality on the DApp will all be up and running. Once we get it live, it will take a little bit of time for that data to actually implement. So a couple of days, you'll start to get some data points on there. So the analytics will all be cleaned up. And that's really the last thing for us other than minor polishing so we can get ready to release contracts.
Analytics. What type of analytics are we talking about? Like, will you be able to see, you know how like V2, say Uniswap, whether it's Pancake or put any other name in front of it. V2, you can't like see what you're earning, right? So to speak, or it's just not easy to see what you're earning.
Yeah, all those APYs, pricing, all that stuff will be updated right there in the DApp. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's going to be fucking fantastic, because that's something that a lot of these dApps just, for whatever reason, they don't think it's important enough to put in there. I don't know why.
So there's some interesting stuff on this where, and if like for people who are like actually interested in how a lot of this stuff builds out, there's some really fundamental like building ideas that you have where the more cool stuff you do, the more your stuff can get screwed up. And the more where you can't engage with any part of the system without taking on the risk of the full system, right? So we want to nail vanilla. I want it to be the best vanilla that exists. I want the least amount of code, the least amount of risk, the least amount of exposure, the least amount of new things, because what really matters is that it just works. As long as it works, everything else is okay. So a big part of it is just cleanliness. So we have minimal changes to any of the background code, minimal changes, minimum governance, all of those things. So there's not a lot of extra things built on top except for the front end. And with front ends, that's very easy to have redundancy. So you can be more aggressive in how you do certain things on the front end, because if a front end breaks, you just use a different front end. It doesn't hurt the code, doesn't cause liquidation. Nothing about the structures hurt. So when it comes to some of these models, you actually want things ran by everyone and different people, because it makes the whole system more rigid and more robust. So with front ends, people can do certain things that are more aggressive and run all kinds of neat stuff. For us, we wanted to have it where you could come in, engage with the code, use the code, and it would do exactly what you thought with almost no thought. So it's extremely clean, very simple. The analytics are there so that someone could come in, engage with the ecosystem at a reasonably high level and not have to use any other tool, but there's nothing extra. Like that's the idea on that building. And so for anything extra, there's all kinds of cool stuff you can do on top and weird ways you can integrate these things. But that's not for us. There's a lot of different flavors. We're going to give you vanilla and it's going to work. And then if anyone else wants to make milkshakes and add stuff, that's what that stuff's for. But then you can engage with all those different risk profiles separately and not mess up what's already perfect. So what's perfect will be there and be perfect.
But this is more of a general question, but you don't, to provide analytics, that's just, it doesn't need to interact with the code. That can be completely segregated. So you don't have to expose something from a risk.
Correct. Right. And that's what I was kind of getting at. That's one of those few things we're willing to do that's beyond just delivering the code nice and clean. Is this is something where people can come in and engage with it without having to touch another dApp in any way. So this is the minimal amount of things that we can offer in that, and again, in that very clean format where someone can come in, just use the dApp and engage with the code in a safe way. And then for everything extra, that stuff's extra. There's all different kinds of ways that stuff can be built on.
What are your thoughts on USDL? I think I maybe heard this from Jesse before he was leaving or whatever, that they were trying to, and you're on the team, use USDL as the stablecoin on Pulse, as like the Circle USDC type thing on Ethereum or Tether or whatever you want to call it. What are your thoughts on that? And how do you think that something like that could play out to be USDL, be that version on there?
That is one of the most sound, cleanest, simplest things that all the users can do to make the network more safe, more rigid, more censorship resistant, and make BAG go up.
Talk about why you believe that to be true. Like what's the thought process and the reasoning you go through behind you think it's going to create more value in the system by having USDL be the primary stablecoin on Pulse?
So I'll run through the top couple stablecoins just quickly. USDC, that's Circle, that's kind of Coinbase. So you think, okay, as long as I trust Circle, they're the ones that are holding my money. Nope. They have multiple custodians now, and they're transitioning all that over to their BlackRock fund. So you are now trusting the U.S. regulations, BlackRock, who's custodian Circle's money, and then Circle's money through Coinbase and the rest of the regulations, also that you can run around with the dollar. That doesn't sound great. That sounds worse than just holding dollars. That doesn't sound very decentralized or censorship resistant. USDT. I'm not even sure what USDT really holds. I've seen some of their paperwork and some of their treasuries. Maybe that stuff's there. Kinda. And they have admin keys, same issuance issue. Their redemption is ridiculous. So I can't quite redeem it, but essentially it's just fluid enough that I can go through centralized exchanges, which are now having stablecoin wars, and there's less and less exchanges taking other people's money, probably because those are smart entities that realize how the game's played, and they don't want to take exposure to other people's probably paper. And then you have BUSD, which is from Binance. Nope. Binance doesn't issue that. Paxos does. And Paxos only issues it on one chain. And so where BUSD that most people engage with isn't even a stable coin, and it's not pegged to the dollar. It's a wrapped stable coin pegged to a stable coin that is then pegged to a dollar that's issued by Paxos. So that's the string of events that most people are using. And then you're like, well, we'll use DAI. DAI's a good one. It kind of was, except that DAI's backed by $500 million worth of treasury bonds. Those same products I just brought up, less ETH, and now also staked ETH, which is then centralized. So you have exposure to all those different collateral types. And then they're a good group of people. They've been spending a lot of time with the Davos group and the WEF. So I'm sure they absolutely have our best interests at heart. So those are your choices for the main stable coins. Those don't sound great.
Well, thank God for Pulsechain. I'm starting because I have to literally, I mean, I know, guys, we've been waiting a year and a half for this now. So everyone's like just trying to keep up with technicals that they have no idea about, nor do they ever care about, nor will they ever care about. But the point is, at least people are interacting in the community. I'm a foot soldier, right? I want to keep everyone up. I want to keep everyone's spirits up. I want to keep talking to guys like Walrus, and I want to keep moving forward because I truthfully believe that we don't have anything that I want to use quite yet in crypto. I like to use Ethereum, but I can only use it on Sunday at 2. because or Sunday at 2 a.m. or really late at night or early morning, because that's when the gwei is enough for me not to want to put a bullet in my foot because I've wasted another lunch money on it every single time. I wanted to ask you about liquid loans in the launch trajectory, because remember in the beginning when liquid loans was coming out and everyone was like, it's launching 30 days after Pulse, we're all gonna get rugged. And now no one gives a rat's shit about that because so much time has gone by. Is there a time frame for liquid loans after launch? Anything change there? Used to like roughly a month after they were talking about. I just want to know some specifics on that so people can maybe that sacrifice can kind of get a beat on that.
So I'm actually happy that LL was sort of the first project that came out for a lot of reasons. One, I obviously like and care about the team and the product, and I think a lot of the assets of it are very, very important. But because they came out first, they're the ones who were the first man through the door, who caught every sling, bolt, rock, curse word that could be thrown. And I think that in a lot of ways that kept softening the blow as we went back. And now, again, of course, a ton of projects are going to be trash, but there's a much more open and robust discussion around, hey, there's a new project on Pulsechain. And rather than just absolute aping response, we get, probably not. Who's running it? Okay, are they from the community? Like you get in right into that. People are skeptical, which is what they should be, but they're open to hear a few answers, right? Maybe they're too short, maybe they're quick to jump off, but at least they're willing to listen, and we can sort through some of these things. Our timeline will probably be pretty similar, 30, 60 days in that range. There's a couple of reasons. One is you want to have certain things up and running and have some aggregated data there for price feeds and different things. The other is that you just need the stability and multiple pools to be filled, and you sort of need to let the land settle just a little bit, and that makes sure that it's simple and easy for users before you just let people get on there and do crazy stuff.
As we were talking about the stablecoin, I actually kind of put together the reason I think you guys probably have the best bet of actually being a kind of a crypto first stablecoin on L1 versus anywhere else is because a lot of people don't like Richard Hart. And so, they also don't like that he owns 90% of the L1, 90% of DAX, 90% of, Hex or whatever the case is. And so they don't want to get involved in it. Cool, which is perfectly fine, right? But because of that, an alternative is likely going to be needed, because Circle is not going to want to get involved in something where it's 95% owned by one dude, right? Especially when it's somebody like Richard. And so in this case, so an alternative is going to be needed, and at least in the community that is in Pulse and Hex has a good understanding of USDL and has a much higher likelihood of actually getting out there. Because once it's getting starting to get paired with all this other crap metaphorically, it could be good shit, but like there's going to be a lot of crap too. Then it's going to be the default, just because people are trained to go to what they know. They don't go to the absolute best coffee shop. They go to Starbucks because it's the best known coffee, right? And whether it's like USDL is going to be seen everywhere, so they're going to be the best known stable coin over there. Like something else could change in the future, but like I think you guys have definitely a very good chance of being that number one crypto base too, which will be very interesting because of like all the issues you just talked about. But that we don't have, as far as I'm aware, it could easily be out there, but any like L1 doesn't have like a crypto first type of a stable coin on the do you know of one?
So they do exist. The issue is it's just what you just explained. People don't go to the best option. They go to the one they know. So if you go to anyone in crypto and say, hey, give me 3 stable coins, I already know which one they're going to tell you. I already know which 3. It's your USDC, USDT, and then you get a little bit of variable. Are they going to say BUSD or DAI? That's basically it. That's it, right? You get a few people in our community in certain places that'll like talk about like true USD and a few different things, but that's it. That's all they know. So, and they have no idea the exposure of that. And then they hold those things. And this is where to answer your question, the biggest difference is just education. And that's one of those things that when people say that they're doing education or adoption or onboarding, I'm very critical of what they say next. because usually that's bullshit and that's not what they're doing, but it sounds good. So when we say that education is first is important, if you right now go on Google and look up the word admin keys, you know what comes up first? A Liquid Loans article. #1 on the Google results for admin
that's
keys.
fantastic.
If you type in Scamwick, you know what comes up first? A video of Matt explaining what Scamwicks are. And I think the blog post is 5th.
Dude,
So,
you guys are killing it.
and it'll get better. We're working on the blog and going through that, doing some cool AI stuff along with me and a few of the guys going through it at a high level. So those things matter. No one took the time to go make sure that admin keys popped up. The highest results were something from Ford, and I don't even remember what the other one was. No one took the time. It ranked low. It's an easy one. We talk about them all the time. No one took the time to go get the SEO right.
There's 100 other fucking terms just like that.
Yep. And I promise we're going to go get most of them. So this is the stuff that goes on in the background for education. So if we can do one, people do need to know what admin keys are. And two, if every single time everyone else in another community looks up and sees, why are these the guys that are educating us? It's important. So we go through and work on a lot of these different things in the background to make sure that stuff gets outside of the community. And in some ways, maybe we've seemed a little quieter in some ways since I've been there. One is I try to be drama free, and usually if there's an issue, I just go talk directly, and I don't Twitter beef with people. The other is that we're very, very well known, and there's a lot of people doing good content. Cryptographics has dropped one about us. You guys have talked about us before. There's so much stuff that's out there that I don't necessarily have to do all this content here. So what does the community need me to do? Go get other people. Go get other people and educate outside the silos. So that's the reason for the podcast. That's the reason there's been such a switch to talking about macro events. That's the reason it's focusing on written education and these SEO rankings, because that was the low hanging fruit. So we just keep moving to wherever it is. There's whatever it is that was going to get us the best bang for the buck and the best results. So we keep doing that education everywhere. And then when it comes to on the chain, it's so that people understand these things. So why does it matter that you're on one of those things? Well, because sometimes you go to proof of stake and you're excited. Sometimes you go to proof of stake and you realize that half the blocks are being censored to be OFAC compliant. You don't understand why. It's actually usually more than half. It's usually closer to 60, 65%. So, but no one cares if they don't know to care, right? So has anyone here ever heard the word Aragon said and wasn't talking about a Lord of the Rings movie? Nope.
Well, I think it is it's the screener, right? It's the Pulsechain. What do they call it?
Client.
You're right. Yeah, the client where you what's the one that we use on the Etherscan? It's kind of like Etherscan, right?
That's a block explorer.
Fuck me.
But that's my point, man. You have a crypto show. You don't even know that's my whole point. It doesn't even matter to people. No one cares, right? So until we get primed, no one cares. So whether or not the community ever needs to know any of these things, we're going to have a group of however many thousand people who now understand clients, who now understand nodes, who now understand syncing. And someone like Gamma, who's extremely savvy and has been doing a lot of stuff out in the community to talk to different people. Gamma has never had more people listen to him in his life. And now he's like, oh, wait, people care about nodes? This is awesome. And now he's out here just preaching the gospel. But because we got primed to say that this matters, now people go and look and learn and listen. So if we go prime people, hey, stay away from stuff with admin keys. All right, cool. What's an admin key? Now you know, and you stay away from those things and you get into things with a better risk profile, better stable coins. So if you build better stuff, it is your responsibility to explain to people why what you're doing is better so that they can do better stuff too if you actually care. So education on all these things is getting people into better products and understanding and having better risk profiles. And then the other part for all this stuff is, again, if it's what's normal, then taking these things and allowing big players to collateralize at safe levels, take these things out of pools, maintaining that liquidity pool in a very manicured way, which I know is something you guys have been digging into a lot and doing a lot of education on, which is incredible. So all those things work synergistically together. You can have a better stable coin, you can have better price performance, better censorship resistance, thinner liquidity in a good way for all these things. And you can do it all just by knowing how shit works.
I think it's super important. You guys are really this website is really good. I mean, if you actually care about this stuff,
look at the written
look right here. I mean, and first of all, guys, I never saw this little podcast section right here. This looks fantastic. Great job. Oh, sorry. Let me switch it over. This looks fantastic. Great job. This is what I want to see. Like when I see shit like this, I get excited. I don't have to listen to it necessarily right away, But you guys are doing all those things. Literally, I've been finding that in crypto, we need to market to people that I don't know exactly how I got in here because I thought it was a hobby and I thought the number would go up. And I think most people kind of get into it for the same reason. And I got in because Richard Hart was really laying down the law about admin keys, about stuff protecting. He's like, you're going to lose all your money. You're going to lose all your money. That I understood. I know what it's like to lose all your money. And you guys are doing all the little things to educate people. Now, you might not have the voice that Richard Hart he's created over the last 12 years is insane. But this is what we need. Just like the cell phone, right? We didn't start with this cell phone. I used to build cell phone towers. I can promise you, I went to Nicaragua the other day. They don't look a damn thing that they do down here. And so it takes time to build this infrastructure. It takes time for people to learn. I always say, I'm 5 years away from knowing what the fuck I'm doing. But I don't care. Like, I'm just one of those guys. Like, I don't care. I know where the future's headed. I know the cell phone towers are going to look better. I know I'm going to have more ability with this. And I'll be able, I didn't know what this was when I was born, right? Like, I didn't have an idea. When someone handed me my first phone, I was like, oh, they're pinging this off the tower. Blah, 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 blah. But it takes years and years and years to figure this stuff out. And it's about getting with the right people and marketing. I think it's a lot from here. Like, I try to find the guys that I really align with. And then I try to support them because I think they're doing the right thing, because I don't have all the specifics. I don't have all the knowledge. I just want to learn and be in this environment and meet guys that I align with. And that's what I find over here in the Liquid Loans team. And I wanted to ask you about the Pulsechain update. Where are you at as far as, we all know that Richard popped the tweet that no one understood and everyone wanted to go to ChatGPT and dissect it, and they still didn't understand it. Where do you see Pulsechain at this point? And are they basically just trying to figure out if a lot of load, like, I'm sure like they're not certain how much load is going to be on it. Is that like the primary goal through all this testing, is to see like, can this bear load? Because one thing that Richard Hart hates is downtime. Yeah. If I know anything about Richard Hart, he does not want his product to go down for 1 second. So is that kind of what they're going through, testing to see how things will work and just make sure there's no mistakes and see what kind of load they can bear on the system? And if you have any insight on his tweet, I don't have to pull it up because it's just gibberish to me, basically. Where do you think we're at with Pulsechain? Walrus, win Pulse.
So what you're seeing there is when they talks about Geth, Aragon, Prism, Lighthouse, those are the clients. So none of that matters to you guys. Don't ever worry about it again. You can listen to it just to understand long enough to get to the end where I tell you when, and then forget it because it doesn't really matter to you. If you care, then there's great education. Go look the stuff up. They're the clients that you have to run on the validator side because there's actually 2 layers in ETH because after the merge. So you have to run all those clients. There's 2 different clients. Aragon helps with some third-party stuff, different explorers and different things. Again, none of it really matters to a user. You're never going to touch on that stuff. If you're going to run a validator or you want to participate in those things, then those things do matter. And Gamma is definitely the guy to go follow on that stuff. I'm going to get with him. He's done a couple of good ones, but we're going to try to sit down and we'll go over what most of this stuff is in a clean way and how to run those validators. And then I'll have him do it with me because that way our production team can chop it up and hand it out to people in a digestible way. So all of it really showing there, that was the longest way and most technical way to say, hey, we're syncing a full node. That's all he said. So syncing a full archive node like that, what an archive node is it is the way a dApp or a person can go get information off the blockchain in a very, very fast way. So essentially, this is a really high-end block explorer for the dApps. That's what it really does. So when you have these things, they're going through and syncing them and making sure that all that data is caught up to date. And the other part is if you see in one of the tweets where, yeah, there you go, that one. So where he says Geth and EBS snapshots are done, what he's saying is for those clients, their snapshot is done because when you sync a full node, you have to sync every block all the way up till now, which means that you have to sync a block every 12 seconds from 2015 when Ethereum started, every single block all the way until now. So this takes a long, long time, which is what everybody's understanding here. But once he gets through with this process and all these things are updated, he'll have a snapshot, and that way other archive nodes can get up and running much, much, much faster. So all that really says is, hey, we're going through. making sure that the testing is right, making sure that these things are indexed so that these contracts and everything can go through and verify. So, right, all that stuff is on chain. But if you can't go get the information, it doesn't matter, right? So, yeah, that's why essentially the block explorer is for users, and archive node is the block explorer for all this back end architecture. So, having that stuff caught up and syncing and running, well, then you can actually go through and run tests and actually sample an archive node at thousands or millions of transactions throughout a day, so that you can actually aggregate all this data. So again, it's just a really high-end block explorer for stuff on the backside. And then that snapshot is so that everybody else can get up to date quicker. If everybody remembers during the test nets when they just never caught up trying to index, imagine if you could basically go in and download it offline and start at 80% and then finish. That's what those snapshots are.
Very, very interesting. So a lot of stuff that anybody who's listening it's not going to be relevant at all to what they're.
It's bullish, okay, you motherfuckers.
Yep. So where they're really at is what you know is that when they're using all of these clients and they're syncing, that means the clients are updated. That means they're at the spot where they probably have V3 running in some type of an environment, or probably multiple of them running in different environments where they're going through and checking different things at different levels. So they're probably already in that phase of once they're through with all the integer adjustments, because supply numbers are big, right? So it's kind of like that stuff. If people are old enough to remember like Y2K, when they used to have like 9.8 and then they had to go to like all 4 digits, it's a very, very extravagant version of that. So once all that stuff's done and you're on these testing, they sped up the block time. You go in there and look to see as that causes confusion. So I would, again, looking at what we're seeing, the work is probably done as far as like there's nothing like new to solve and come up with like some new solution. You're just basically going through and actually making sure that everything you have works the way you think it will, because things when you have as much code as you have on something like E2.0, there's just so much stuff where stuff touches and edge cases and use cases, and you just don't want to have problems.
What are your thoughts on V3 for like Uniswap being on Pulsex? Because V3 is like so much better than V2 in terms of what you're actually able to do, but also the data you're able to actually see in the marketplace. With V3.
It gives you more insight into what people are doing, right? Because if you can see they're playing one side and see their ranges, and you get to like, you can really parse through some of that data, you get a better idea than somebody. Because sometimes you can be adding liquidity because you're essentially taking a long-term position. You're trying to cash out. You can be doing it just trying to like nullify price action. Like sometimes you just don't understand the games that are being played with some levels of liquidity. But with V3, the data is a little clearer. I mean, it'll be better off. There's no reason we can't. I think that some of that confusion is just because we usually, like I said, when we're talking about liquidity, we'll just say V3 and we mean Uniswap V3, but then it overlays with testnet so people get confused. So Pulsex is just the V2 version, which is what most people think of when they think of liquidity pools. It's the cool, interesting, asymmetrical, concentrated stuff on V3. But as soon as that license is up in April, they'll be able to go in there and fork it, and they can add it on as well. The same way with Uniswap. And
so what happens to the incentive token?
Nothing.
But like, I mean, is there any reason to continue with an incentive token, or say this launches actually in May or June, right? Why not? Richard's already mentioned it's just you shouldn't even give a shit about the incentive token. I don't give a shit about it. It's the thing that I care the least about of the tokens that are coming out. And V3 is so much better than V2 in many, many different ways. Why wouldn't you just update, or what are your thoughts on just updating it and dropping the incentive token completely and because once you go through and have everybody trained in one way of doing something, and then you change to doing something differently, people get fucking confused and lost very, very easily. And the user experience is very, very bad. Right. So like, why not just, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Like, we're not in charge. I don't have a line to fucking Richard. So what do you think about that? Just dropping the incentive token and having Pulsex just be Pulsex by itself. But now it's like Uniswap with the Uni token that actually gets value and can accrue value.
So the part of the answer to that overall is actually some of the stuff that GRC was talking about earlier. If people even have to know what V2 and V3 are, we already screwed this thing up. People should never have to. We can care. That's fine. Like, if people want to engage at that level, that's fine. But if we're talking to a user, a consumer, a customer, as far as someone just applying on the chain, and I even have to say V2 or V3, we already screwed this thing up. They don't care. They just want decent order execution, and they don't even know what I mean by decent order execution, but they still need it, right? So the reason you have both is because then you basically offer both sides, and as the things grow, most of us are already using CowSwap, Matcha, 1inch, these things that are already a DEX aggregator in some ways. They're swapping inside of Uniswap, don't even realize it's a DEX. They don't even realize they're paying a penalty, but they don't realize it's an aggregator. So you really want all these tools because there's specific things where you'd want those. So if somebody wants to provide liquidity, it takes a higher skill cap to use V3 effectively, and you're always going to have a higher risk of some impermanent loss there. So there's some handicapping, some training wheels that go along with V2. Some people are just comfortable with that model. You also have it where you really can't drive certain things to zero. So there's a few applications where V2 has some incentives. And again, people like the yield farming aspect. So you can basically give people all those tools and then still have V3. But that's really for producers and people who are hobbyists or professionals engaging. For the average user, quickly, they'll be using tools that aggregate that stuff and they won't even know the difference.
It is a good point, though. But the one thing about V2 liquidity providing that I've noticed is that I have a few friends that are still retired as fuck because of PancakeSwap. And they got in so early, and they got in and they were degenning at the time because it was new and everything was still a little bit more new. But the multiplier can be quite ridiculous if you get in there early. Now, it's not super efficient down the road. And I'm kind of curious about what Sam said too, about like, how do you drop the incentive token? How do you kind of take that out of the picture and then switch to a V3? But at the same time, I think there's a lot of opportunity for the guys that are in this community and that are paying attention to get some extremely good yield on V2 liquidity providing without really having to do anything except go through it once.
And the thing that I would have to say on what you were saying, Walrus, is it's like we don't use flip phones anymore, correct? Because they're garbage, right? Like V2 is garbage in a lot of ways relative to V3. And so like by choosing to continue holding on to the flip phone when there's something that's substantially better in many different ways, it just doesn't seem like a great move from like my point of view, because I don't think holding on to this thing that it makes the market less efficient. It artificially like distributes liquidity versus in a real market, it will aggregate around the price. And so it just does. I get your point. Like the average person, most people are not going to care, but people who provide liquidity, which is like the people who are going to be using this thing, right? Because somebody's going to be providing liquidity. Those are going to be on V3, right? Because it's a far more efficient market. Right? Like it doesn't artificially squish liquidity out, right? If you think of liquidity as a pyramid, that's in like real life. And then V2 just makes it go like this and it's all flattened out. So it's like, there's an example out there right now, and I don't remember where it is. It starts with a B that does it in the fashion you said, where they have V2 and V3. Do you know what that was? It starts with a B, I think. They have, a V2 version. They just acquired a license from Uniswap, and they operate a V3 as well on their same DEX. And you can just press a button and toggle back and forth between it.
Right.
So that like one user could use this side or one user could use this side. And through routing, it can probably be just pick the most best way to execute for the actual user. To be like, if you are using V2 interface or V3 interface, it doesn't really matter because it will route you through the cheapest way to like get you the best price execution or whatever.
Right.
But
remember, these things are going to expand beyond V3, right? Like we're going to get into, we'll probably have Curve and Balancer, and like you get even having more exotic forms of liquidity providing to make these markets even more efficient. So, but if you only have the most sophisticated tools, you build in a barrier to entry where only certain people can now come and play at a level. And you have like, especially for like smaller tokens and thinner liquidity, you have it where you can like press out of ranges and it can get into some weird things. So if you have both and you have aggregators on top, you basically allow people to participate at the level they actually understand. And you can use V2 and some of these tools, like you said, to be flat for that reason, to be a little buoyant. and then you can have the most sophisticated users targeting and making the market efficient anywhere it is. So you can kind of encourage participation and some level of, again, in some ways it just provides stability. And then the people with sharp teeth come in and they're going to extract value everywhere, right? They're going to be more capital efficient. They're going to be tighter on the ranges. They're going to move. They're going to, actually maintain, manicure, move that liquidity around. They're going to use things like, go and find the actual yield and, some multi-asset pools and Curve, or again, Yearn, any of these things. So the sophisticated players in the market are going to keep moving around and using the best tool available. And you just really basically want to offer the big toolkit. And especially when you have aggregation services, they'll even, again, smooth it out service on top. So again, you end up with a clean user experience by just using the aggregators, and you just hand the tools out to the market and let them keep doing what they're doing. And if you get to a point where there's so much liquidity that you're similar to like what you're experiencing in legacy markets, if we had that many players and that much time, and the charts were in a way where people had, I can't remember what that term is they use for, like, it's not Bollinger Bands, but it looks like Bollinger Bands, where they're using historical models for their plays. And if it gets out of them, that usually just runs up. I can't remember what the other term is. It's not a Bollinger Band, but it looks similar on a chart. As those things become tighter, then you'll see these things mimic what you see in legacy. So yeah, there's no, again, you're getting into these players, like no one at Goldman Sachs has liquidity where it's just two piles, that they're just, two pendulums. We're way past that stuff. So those things evolve though, right? So you allow those things to be phased out naturally rather than forcing the market into a more difficult, a higher capacity, a higher skill cap tool.
I'm super interested that we all talk about the OA a lot here, and I'm just going to say daddy. I'll just use the term daddy to say who the OA is. But when you're talking about a pool that's $5-10 million, and there's someone that tends to be a lot richer than that, almost micromanaging the price in a good way, in a nice way, and we've seen this with Hex all the time. Like, I know guys that have a F load of Hex or an F load of ETH, and they're not even willing to really sell it because it's not even worth it in slippage for them. So they go on supporting the system and continuing to try to grow this thing, right? And that's what I like. Like, I've looked around at everything and I'm like, there's no one supporting me over here. There's a liquidity pool that's on Uniswap duct tape token that's $176 million. Like, I'm not pushing on that thing at all. But when you talk about $10 million, the average user can come in and out of that and change their life without any problem. But once you start that's why I was a little worried about the $1.7 billion like combined of loaded volume. But now I'm starting to feel as if, maybe there's someone behind the scenes that really has a better idea of what we're looking for, about a better idea of how the marketing works. Because as you can see, after Hex pumps 20%, everyone's best friends again, right? So there is a lot of power in that. We went down 95%, you go up 20%, we're all grabbing beers again. It's just like that. So I really feel comfortable, or at least like there's a benefit to the user, to the end user, by having tight liquidity that's managed by someone that maybe has an enormous amount of money comparatively to that pool in particular. So that gives me good vibes.
In V3, you could provide like V2 type of liquidity if somebody so chooses to do that or whatever. Sure. The person, right, because you got kind of two parties. You have the people who are going to provide liquidity to the marketplace, and then you have people who are going to use that liquidity. So the people who provide liquidity, right? Like, I'm going to be going towards V3 because I'm going to provide liquidity. I want capital efficiency of my money, right?
Yep.
Versus like V2 doesn't provide any data for me or any additional return for me. But the user, the end user, doesn't like. They couldn't care less. They don't even know. They don't know. They don't care. They're just clueless. They're just going on life, just doing it that way. But like I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how he chooses to play this out. I'm very curious to watch this play out because V3 I feel like needs to be there because otherwise I'll just use Uniswap fork over there, right? If you know what I mean, kind of thing. I wanted to ask you about the learning stuff because that was super interesting. I like that strategy with the podcast because I think you guys have 2 podcasts now, right? With isn't Hexycat with you guys as well, or was?
Yeah, he's taking a bit of a breather right now. We'll see. Hopefully, we'll get him back in on some of the podcasts and stuff.
So the podcast and the written form, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a big thing that CZ does over in Binance and with PancakeSwap. Education, and it is very, very helpful. What types of metrics do you kind of look at to see or understand the growth, or what are some of the things that you're seeing while it's still early on in the strategy, right? But what are you noticing?
One, that not enough people are doing it. It should be way more competitive. And I say that a bit like I'm excited that we found this, this inefficiency in the market to take advantage of. And also,
I'm excited for you guys. It's massive opportunity.
Also, guys, I'm a little embarrassed for some of these players. How long y'all been here, guys? Not our community. And this isn't meant you guys know I like to throw cold water on the industry, right? Because we can start to feel ourselves when we get some X's and build cool stuff that we're this, we're that. Nope. So the fact that just no one ranked on admin keys, there's so many players, I just can't believe that's cool. Well, I mean, we'll take it. We're happy to, right? So some of it is just seeing so again, you guys, I love to preach this. Guys, there's space everywhere. No one took admin keys. It wasn't that hard to rank all the way up that high. So if you're doing SEO, it has nothing to do with crypto. Crypto needs you. Please come find some way to get in here. Go literally, and a lot of times people have this stuff for free. If you'll go find, there's money in crypto. Go find one of these companies, say, hey, do you guys realize your SEO sucks? Here, check this out. And then just show them what it means. So if you're doing SEO optimization of almost anything, everybody in crypto needs you. Trust me. So every time we see these kind of things pop up, I just always want to tell people, I don't care what it is you do. If you're good at it, just come do it here. You can be involved in the space. Our writers, same kind of thing. So seeing that there's just so much low hanging fruit to come do stuff is pretty incredible. Honestly, that's the part that stuck out to me. It wasn't even any of the stuff. I was just oh, we ranked 1 on 2 or 3 of these already. Well, that was cool. But the blog, we're having to go through and use React and cool stuff to make it fast so that it'll actually populate and rank high. And there's a lot of backend stuff there to get right. But once you do, it goes off. And we, for me, a lot of it is on the front, going through these things with a fine tooth comb. So we have writers that, that write good articles. And then we have our SEO super, super optimized, and we're getting better there. But then our articles, I go through these things. So, I'm hey, this says ETH, Ether, and Ethereum. And they're oh, it's the same thing. I'm no, it's not. It is used that way in conversation. But if you're going to write it down in one of these articles, it needs to be right. ETH is a ticker symbol. Ether is a coin. And Ethereum is a network. Which one did you mean? Because those aren't the same thing. So we're going through some of these blogs so that they're just as sharp as they can possibly be. And again, as you see that, the more you get refined, if you go and do those kinds of things, I'm sure using your background, you've gone into certain projects and been are these guys for real? Just because you have an expertise and you're used to what that looks like at an extremely high level and a very competitive level. And then you see that in crypto, some of these things aren't as comparative and aren't as fleshed out as we'd like them to be yet. So seeing that there's so much low hanging fruit there, and then going through the articles in the way we have, and then seeing them, pulling up something from CoinDesk. I'm not picking on them, but they're a big one. Some of their articles suck. And I'm not talking about hey, the bad opinion or anything. I'm talking about if you work through this and you're well, that's kind of true in the way you mean it, but that's not good wording. And then, well, this is sort of true, but you said this is a fact, and it's really 75% of the time it's that way. So yes, going through some of those things at a fine tooth comb, even if it's just being particular on wording, it makes a difference in how those things are, passed along in the future. And also that as people work through, they also know the questions to ask, where they don't go, oh, stablecoin's a stablecoin. No, it's not. So, putting in some of those framings that, hey, most of the time it's this, but there's another side. Just so the level of passion to make sure that some of this content is just actually accurate, making sure that stuff ranks is pretty incredible. And we're just not done that. Oh, we're so early. You may not be early on a price chart, but you're early in the industry, and there's so much work left that this stuff can be made infinitely better.
I'm super excited for you guys because I heard that. And for people who are not familiar with SEO, why don't you tell them a little bit what it might be like to rank for something that is only 2 words? Say
it doesn't happen.
Fitness industry. Exactly. It doesn't fucking happen.
You just can't.
It's not going to happen. And to write a probably very thoughtful, appropriate, detailed, that's SEO optimized blog post and be able to get it there in number one with it's only 2 words. It's not like
It
a
doesn't
long.
happen.
That's amazing. And I think this is a massive opportunity for you guys. Like this, I'm excited for you. Are you noticing a lot of traffic yet, or how early are you guys on this?
It's because of some of those things, because we're gonna do. I wish we're almost on the edge here in like just a little bit. There'll be a little bit of a rebrand on it. This was.
I thought the same thing. I was like, this should maybe be its own brand separately.
It's coming right there. So some of the stuff is we've had them up just because of the seasoning and the timing on those things. You want to keep them up, and you guys know all the site map and getting these things backlinked properly and not routing the wrong way, stuff that no user would ever know or understand or care about, to make sure the algorithm handles it. Going through all that, but we're going to have a little bit of a naming thing here that'll come out pretty quick, where it's simple. So if someone's like, hey, what's an admin key? And I'm like, hey, go check my blog. They're like, nah, it's cool. I'll just Google it. So like, if you just say blog, no one hears you anymore, right? Or if you're like looking for like a source of information, they're like, oh, that guy's blog's really good. Like, I don't care what that guy feels about the BERT. Like, it just feels like it's going to be personalized information. So it's still basically a blog and a host of articles, but we're going to have a more refined name and some of those things like the podcast link and stuff on the site, so that it's like, hey, go check this out. Hey, this is where it's at. Hey, go check their articles. Hey, go check this. Hey, go check this. And you just drill the same word into them over and over until they realize that's a good source of information to go there and look. And that's when we're going to like give it out to the community. It's like, hey, here's your tools. We don't care. Hand it out, share it out, clip it, share it, just get it out there. It's good information. That's what it's for. So this is something, again, with How to Pulse and admin stuff, like I'm always about that. Like, hey, get the message out there. Because if you build good stuff, then you need educated people. Otherwise, we're not going to know your stuff's better. So I want everybody to be educated. 1, I care. And then 2, I involve myself in things I think are the best stuff in crypto. And I hang around with some of the best people in crypto. So the more you know about crypto, the more you think my stuff's cool. So both those things are important. And so that side of it's something that's, been continued and pushed, and it'll be cool. Again, it'll be a big repository of information for the community. And then the stuff will rank high and help get our community out there. I'm going to ETH Denver. That'll be the first week in March. So again, like, you got to go where the people are, man. So we're going to go get in front and, talk to some of these exchanges and talk to some of these other big players and consensus and all these things. And just having someone to speak to, having someone at CoinDesk who you can talk to, and rather than just trying to blow up emails, and having someone in the community they can reference. Well, hey, Walrus was at ETHW or whatever it is, and he was here and he was there. And then these guys are doing this. Well, they rank here. All that stuff, even it's almost again, for something that the community can latch onto, like the race car. No one saw the race car, but they care that you had a race car. So sometimes it's about significance of the event moving forward. And while a lot of these things are kind of significant in what we get done, no, we do show up at the conferences. We do go there. We are here. We are going to go to El Salvador and play with some Lightning Network stuff. Yep. We are going to talk to governments that actually care about this stuff. We are going to look at how stablecoin regulation actually works and what stablecoin actually means, because I actually read every single piece of legislation in the US. I try to keep up on Australia as well that comes up on stablecoins. All of them, not the articles, the bill. I literally have the clips of all the bills because I go through these things because that stuff matters. So having all of that stuff as a process, one, it's actually important. But when people realize you're actually in the industry and doing things, it just gives significance to what we're doing. And we're trying to fill in gaps, right? So for people that like that jarness, what triggered, GRC to RH in the first place, well, RH is still here, right? Like, we have that side of things. So like, we're just trying to find the other side of the value and chasing the other side of the fruit, because we want everybody.
I think this is awesome. I'm glad that you're on their team, because it's a super valuable thing that you appear to be bringing to the marketplace. And the marketplace is going to be expanding very rapidly. So there's going to be a lot of people out there, but the inevitable, like, the best thing will win in the end. There's a giant, the largest like real estate network site, right? They started with a podcast and informational stuff out there, because real estate investing for the average person is a scary proposition, right? And it was all through the education and continuing to work at making
a lot of those really large, really successful mainstream industry dominating things started with like podcasting, small content, videos, multiple platforms, and blogs. Sounds like a good recipe. Somebody should try that.
That is a good recipe, bro. I like that search thing where you
a lot of people might be interested in being like, hey, I work a job or they do their side hustle or whatever, but they would like to help, right? They like the idea of providing value through, content of that in the written form, or actually providing value in that sense where somebody's going to take the time to bring things to the next level, right? As you're doing. What is it that people can do to help in that process for you? You need writers, you need XYZ, and how can they, because we're running up on time here, how would they get a hold of you, or how's the best way to get involved if they wanted to do that?
So the first one is people naturally gravitate toward what they want to do in the first place. So if you tell me what your job is and then tell me what your day looks like, I know what your favorite parts are because they're the stuff you're going to do the most. So one, do whatever the hell it is you care about. Don't worry about what I care about. Do whatever it is you actually like. So you got, again, from your background, liquidity providing, capital efficiency, that stuff's really interesting. I can hear it in your voice. So that's what you gravitated to. No one had to go tell you. You went and found it. So if someone has that type of background and you like those things, then dig into it and bring something back for the community. Come find out something cool and tell the rest of us, and then we can go figure it out, right? So one is just stick to whatever it is you really enjoy. And I don't mean stick to it like don't branch out, but stick to where you're passionate about. If something sounds interesting, go do it. I don't want to try to explain ring signatures and bulletproofs from Monero if you don't care about privacy, because it's just a lot of really hard math. So stick to whatever it is you're interested in. For us particularly, content is king. Chop up, share that stuff. And if you have anyone that will listen, that you have a connection to, that's a part of any of these bigger institutions, tell them to talk to me, talk to us. And it doesn't even have to be me. Just get them in front of the people you think are savvy or will resonate. So I'm more than happy to discuss it. If there's protocols you think will build on chain, if there's infrastructure that you think will come and support the chain, there's communities, people, capital, whatever it is, if you think we can get them here and you have some opportunity and way of engaging with them at a high level, get them in front of them. Again, every industry is not special. And anywhere else, if you have a good lead, you get comped as a lead generator and then you bring them to the closer. That's what you do, right? So it doesn't have to be me particularly. I'm not saying that, hey, I'm the face of Pulsechain. Bring them to whoever it is that's valuable. So if there's things that we're doing that resonates, bring them to us. If it's you guys or Jesse, or it's RH specifically, or Alex, or any of the influencers, or do you think that they're real estate guys and they're going to talk with Gary, funding Jim, get them in front of our people and then give us an in so that we can go through and actually, again, make a difference and build relationships on these things. So that stuff's huge. So build content, share that stuff. It matters a ton. Get in where you fit in, whatever your talents are. I seen a guy give a 45-minute presentation one time in the Telegram room about fireproof safes because we were talking about security. And he's like, oh, I'm an arson investigator on the West Coast. You guys want help? Oh, well, hell yeah, we do, man. That's really helpful. And this dude broke down the different ratings. I didn't even know this was a thing. Now I know, because randomly this guy who I never talked to again was like, no, those fireproof safe ratings depends if they're talking about metal. A lot of them will have a time range for when gold or paper will combust. And I was like, well, that's super helpful. Thanks, man. So again, literally, if you could be an arson investigator, it can be helpful. That's how off the wall, this, it's finance, it's tech, it's marketing. Crypto is this worldwide movement of all these things. Do you speak Spanish? Because a lot of stuff could get translated to Spanish. You speak Albanian? Jory is out there killing it, doing all kinds of stuff because she's a hustler. She does good, short, clean content. People are doing TikTok. Just get in where you fit in. Whatever it is you like doing, come do it for crypto. And if you need help, come find the killers. And if you have someone that has some capital, has a relationship, has a protocol, we got sharp teeth. And all I care about is Pulsechain. So bring them to us.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on and share it with us.
Yes, thank you for
It's a pleasure.
coming on, man. I appreciate it. I've been getting preschooled. Every day that goes by, I'm kind of sitting back again and realizing, even I can get out of control sometimes. When I get good at one subject, I can start to think I understand all subjects. But at the end of the day, we just got to sit back, and we're all supporting the same message, right? We're all supporting decentralization and protecting people from losing all their money, and having an amazing community with low fees that we can all work on. That's what we want. I'm not perfect at this stuff, but I'm just going to keep trying, because I heard if you just keep going at it, something good, a little magic happens at the end. So let's Keep it going, baby. Thank you so much, Walrus, for coming on. I really do appreciate you. And you're so kind and your vibe is so good. And I appreciate you always being level-headed and not buying into all the, BS that I buy into sometimes. So
Takes all kinds, man. Takes all kinds.
Yes, sir. Have an amazing day, Walrus. I'll talk to you soon. Guys, we'll be back tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern.
You already know what time it is.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Crypto in the morning.
Waiting on phone.
Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning.
Ready to take notes.
Smoking a blunt on my way to the gym. 11 a.m. and I'm already tuned in. Got me some hacks and I'm making a stake. Got me some hedge on, I'm making it rain. Pay me some maxi and that's just in case. Jim Reddit sent me to show you the way.
D5 Pro.
Crypto in the morning.